Well, I just want to do a little bit of work off the top for people who haven't seen the film. So Sharon, your character, is the first violinist, the concertmaster in the Berlin Philharmonic. It is, I mean, as most people would know, the most prestigious orchestra in the world. Lydia Tarr, your wife in the film, played by Cate Blanchett, is the conductor of the Berlin Philharmonic. I wonder, for folks who haven't seen it, can you just give us a little précis, a little something about the relationship between your character and Kate's character?
Well, we always thought these two have met through the music and they fell in love with each other through the music. And and Sharon, for me, was always the one in their relationship who kind of is the rooted one. She is from Berlin, she is from Germany, she has her family around her. She is in a very powerful position in the orchestra. But the way she handles her power is slightly different. To me, she's much more of a politician than Tar can ever be. You know, she's a diplomat. Sharon kind of can read people, can soothe their egos, it just makes the orchestra work for the conductor. So that is a very powerful position in its own right, but also she's an incredible musician. And I think through that, that is what gets her the respect of Lydia and also maybe the love. You know, I think it has a lot to do with what they're working on and what their passion is, which is the classical music or music in general. And so that is the world they're living in. And they're together for quite a while. They decided to adopt a child from Syria, a little girl. So, and then don't forget, they just came out of the pandemic. So something in their relationship has shifted at the moment when we meet those two, because they couldn't do what they love to do, which is doing music together with an orchestra. And so I always thought this image of this, that you see a grand piano in their very grand apartment that they live in, and it's untouched. It's in the darkness and it's covered. And that to me was always a slight symbol for their relationship, where we find them right now. And Sharon feels that and tries to rescue it in a very careful way, I would say. But at the same time, she's also not innocent. She's part of the power system that Lydia Tarr upholds. You know, so that was what actually intrigued me about the character Sharon.
Let's stay on that for a second, because I read a quote regarding sort of Sharon's culpability or lack of culpability in Lydia's sort of power dynamic. And I read a quote from you. You said that Sharon enjoys the power and privilege that being married to Lydia brings, but doesn't want to do the dirty work herself.
I guess I said that more or less like this.
Can you talk to me more about
well,
that?
I just, or at least I do. I take the script and I really, take it apart to its bones and try to find as much as I can. And there was this one scene where it's actually the first scene where Lydia comes home and Sharon tells her that their little daughter has a problem in school with someone bullying her. So in a way, I thought, well, Sharon could have gone to the school and solved the problem, but she knows that Lydia will do it in a much more efficient, maybe more unconventional way, let's say, but it will be efficient. So in a way, it was to me a sign. She's telling her our daughter has a problem, knowing that Lydia will do something about it. But she doesn't ask afterwards, did you do anything? What happened? But the problem is solved. So I thought that to me is a sign of how that working relationship, let's say, works. That she sometimes looks the other way when it's convenient, but also maybe pushes in a certain direction, and the other person doesn't really notice that she's being played. And that I found really interesting.
I mean, it's so interesting because it's so complicated. Like even when you watch the film, there's no easy answer to the relationship between your character and Cate's character. Like, you're always asking yourself, like, are they in love? Okay, well, they may love each other. Are they afraid of one another? Do they share power? You know, what is the role of, you know, one person having an affair? Does the other person know about it? It's far more complex than your average sort of relationship story. So to talk to me a little bit, because I've heard actors talk to me about how they might build a relationship with another actor when they have to be married or when they have to be divorced or something that's a little bit more simple. How do you and Cate off screen build the relationship that's that complex?
I don't know if we built it off screen.
What did you do? Did you do anything? Did you talk about it?
Oh yeah, we did talk about it, but you know, we talked a lot with Todd also about the background, how they met, what their life was about. But I'm also a fan of when things are not being discussed too much so that we can explore it while we're actually working on the scene. And I think somehow Cate enjoys that as well. So what was really helpful, what I can say, is that Cate and I met much earlier because we both found ourselves in Budapest 4 or 5 months before we started shooting Tar in Berlin. And we both were working on different projects and were in this somewhat exile because it was still in the pandemic. And we had breakfast and dinners together and got to know each other, start talking about the project, but not just about that. And so in a way, when we then met again in Berlin, we didn't have to get to know each other. There was already, and luckily enough, we like each other, so that helped. And I think then it was all about exploring and rehearsing with Todd the scenes and see what feels right and explore, oh, there's something else to discover, you know, there's much more in there. It's much more complex than I thought at the beginning. So that's how I think it was a development to find the right balance, but also to surprise each other,
right?
You know, in scenes.
I'm not an actor. I've never acted. I have no. So I'm just going to make sure I think I understand that you each. I mean, you have some conversations. You know, you have dinner or whatever, and you talk about your lives, and you get to know one another. You each have your own sort of individual, private interpretations of who these characters are and what their relationships are with one another, and then you sort of step in front of a camera or into like a rehearsal space, and then you just see it sounds like a boxing match, like it sounds like a wrestling match, like you just go in there and see what's going to happen.
You have all the preparation, and then you meet on set, even having talked about it, having discussed things, the back and forth, and you meet on set and the camera's rolling and something else happens. It's like you get a little kick of freedom or something. I don't know, you know, where you kind of feel, okay, whatever happens, let's explore it. And it's the greatest thing if you have someone opposite you who wants to explore that as well. So you always feel every time you do the scene again, you find something new, and that then informs maybe something for the next scene you're going to work on, you know, or on the relationship, because you feel something, oh, that felt different. You know, so that's maybe how I can explain it.
When I was doing research for this, it was unclear to me whether or not you played violin before, because I know you played it in a film, but I've also saw quotes where you were like, I had to learn it for. So like you are the principal violinist, concertmaster in this film, and you had played some violin before this?
Well, the funny thing, I play the piano.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is that they asked me before twice to play a violinist. So I've worked a lot on pretending playing the violin. So when I now worked again with my phenomenal teacher in Germany, who somehow can bring this instrument to you in such an intuitive way and without fear, and I really learned to love this instrument. I really love it. So it was easy for me to work on these pieces of Mahler with her, and at the end of the day, I got to play these pieces So I don't play the violin, but in this case, I do play the pieces that you see me playing, but
Yeah.
you don't hear me as well as the others, because everything you hear and see in the film is live. So Cate conducts in that moment, the orchestra is playing in that moment. So I really didn't want to be the one who then maybe messes something up or so.
Yeah.
So I do play the violin, but muted.
What is the experience like of sitting in an orchestra like that? It was the Dresden Philharmonic, right? It wasn't the actual Berlin
Yes, it was
Philharmonic.
no, it's also in the film. The name never gets mentioned. So, but you kind of think it must be that orchestra. Yeah. I must say that was actually one of the most amazing experiences that I've had with this profession so far, that I could sit in the body of an instrument. That's what it felt like. Like, I'll never forget the first moment when Cate, actually, when we said, okay, now we start, we rehearse, and we were both kind of fearful also and very nervous, and how this was going to go down, with these hundreds of musicians. And she lifted the hand, and then the sound arrives, and you're like, it's just such a phenomenal experience, maybe even more when you're not fully having to concentrate on the piece that you're playing, because it was a rehearsal and I was just overwhelmed. So I kind of went like, oh my God. So I could really hear it from a perspective that I've never ever been in before. That was mind-blowing, I must say. And I told them also, I said, but this is what you get to do every day, create this beauty. I mean, this music is, I really rediscovered classical music again also by working on it, and working on it with these musicians, and listening to Mahler over and over again, and really discovering his work and his life also. And it is so powerful, and it is so beautiful, and it is, I think, music in general, but classical music, especially also this Mahler Symphony, the Fifth, I can invite everyone to really listen through it. It evokes every emotion that you can possibly have in life. And it's the most imminent, it's the art I find that is the most, that hits your emotional center in the most imminent way, and it's just, I was again falling in love with music.
Let's listen to a little bit of it. Take a listen. That is a little bit of Gustav Mahler's Fifth Symphony from the film Tar. That's by the way, that's the recording from the film. So if I'm not mistaken, Nina, there is a little bit of muted you in there, right?
There is, and I will never forget that. It is such a powerful thing. Just da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da, and it's also such a physical experience. It's just fun. It's just really fun.
My understanding is that, and this does come up in the film, but Gustav Mahler, the composer of that piece, his wife Alma Mahler was also a composer. And from my understanding of doing the research for this interview, you were interested in looking at Mahler's relationship with his partner, in that it might help you understand better the relationship between your character Sharon and her wife Lydia in this film. Am I right about that?
Yeah, well, while working with Marie, my teacher, and who is herself in her own right a phenomenal violinist, she told me about the relationship of Alma Mahler and why Gustav Mahler wrote this piece for her. And normally we hear, for example, the Adagio as a very solemn, sad kind of piece, but he wrote it in this moment out of pure love and of trying to win this woman back. And then I learned about who Alma Mahler is, and that all of a sudden gave me the idea, but hang on, Alma Mahler she was really not innocent. She was working. She was working Mahler. She was working basically every man she was with, because in her days, it was really tough for a woman to be a composer or to become anything really, for that matter. But she was a very open, somewhat glamorous, I guess, person, but also she was vicious in some way. She was monstrous in some way. That's not Sharon. But by learning about her, I thought, yeah, there's something in this, that's interesting. That you think you know the person and you think you know who Sharon is, but then there are little glimpses where you go, ooh, ooh, you think about relationships, and is there such a thing that one is the victim and one is the perpetrator, or or maybe is it the other way around?
Yeah, what is complicity and all that, Because you're right.
Exactly.
It'd be easy to look at the relationship between Mahler and his wife and to think that that it was a sort of a spurned composer, oppressed by her husband. But when you realize Alma Mahler's own sort of intentions and her own work around supporting her husband and hurting others to support her husband, so you're right. I can see the connection between the two.
Well, she actually became the first editor of books, and she always made her husband do the work and do a great work, because somewhat geniuses, but she made sure they get the money. So she was a fascinating woman. She didn't get to do her composing, but she became an incredible businesswoman, a very intelligent, highly clever woman. So that was fascinating to me. So on the side, I discovered this incredible person.
You've had, of course, people who are listening to this who are familiar with German cinema would know you from your roles over the years in big German films. By the way, how was Cate Blanchett's German? She had to learn German for this role.
Yeah, it was very good.
She good?
Yes, I was impressed. Now she has the accent down. Really good. Really, really good.
Was there a word or a phrase she had to run by you or anything like that?
No, no. She didn't run it by me. She had a phenomenal coach, also coming from the opera world, and so on. So she didn't need my help. But what gives you away is because we have the sound ich, sich, and normally if foreigners try to get it, they also go ich. It's always very hard, but it's very soft. It's a very soft thing. And she got that, and I was like, nice.
I'm not gonna spoil it. Later in the interview, I'm going to try. I have to mention something to you that has that sound in it, and I'm already stressed out about it now. I was already stressed out about it, and now I'm more stressed out about it. Before we get to that, I understand that growing up in Germany, you of course watched German film and German television, but you also watched American films, if I'm not mistaken. And now we're talking about you being even though it was filmed largely in Germany and Europe, it is an American film. Talk to me a little bit about what watching American films might have meant to you growing up.
I think first and foremost, I grew up with American films. So the first films I can remember were actually John Ford Westerns, was films with Bette Davis, whom I loved as a little girl. It was basically all the greats, it was the old Hollywood, because I was only allowed to watch one film on Sunday. Otherwise, I wasn't allowed to watch television. So this was always a real special moment for me, to sit down with my hot chocolate and so on, and I could watch one film, and I really immersed myself in this world. And I think not only how these actresses acted, but it was also Paul Newman films and Jack Nicholson when he was young, and all these incredible actors that were working just got me very. First of all, they made me dream, you know, and I was just amazed by this art form film. But I never thought I could ever enter that kind of world because I was very much in the theater world, grounded there.
Yeah, your mom was a theater actor, right?
Yes, exactly. And I always knew I wanted to do that, but I never knew I could somehow enter the film world. But I think that was the first thing that got me really excited was Katharine Hepburn, later on Gina Rowlands, you know, and then at a certain point I discovered the French cinema, you know, with Truffaut and Godard and all the phenomenal actors working there. And so yeah, but really American cinema was and it still is a big influence.
Why were you only allowed one film on Sundays?
Because my parents didn't like, more my father, I must say, didn't like that you get, you know, television at the time, and it's maybe comparable to social media or so. He said, do something, think, read, play, be creative, do something. Don't just sit there and get, you know, kind of drenched.
That backfired on him as you ended up becoming a film actor, you know.
Exactly. So, but maybe that's what made it happen, you know. Yeah, and but I must say there was something to it, of course, you know, because it became something very special.
Very special. Yeah.
It's not one film after the other. You watch one, and it's really the one thing you're looking forward to the whole week.
How do you compare and can you compare and contrast working with like German filmmakers and German sets versus American filmmakers and American sets?
In the actual work on set, I don't see so much difference. I see a difference in personality. You know, every director is different, and every actor and partner you work with is different. And the best ones are always the ones that want to be collaborative. You know, that's when it's actually really fun what you're doing. But of course, with someone like Todd, you don't find that so often in Germany. Someone who knows everything about film, who's a cinephile, who's a musician, who's a cinematographer and so on, right? Who's an actor, who, I think he started working in the Paramount Studios when he was very young as an assistant and so on. So he really, you have the feeling, oh, there's someone who brings the whole film history with him. And it doesn't, you know, it frees him in a way. But he also knows I have a certain, I want to get to somewhere with the art that I'm doing. And it costs him. And he somehow, I feel things, it has to cost everyone what we're doing because it's important.
What does it cost him?
Oh, a lot of energy, a lot of time, a lot of energy is maybe the right word. He it's a bit like Cate is the same. They immerse themselves so much that you don't have much other life around you for this moment, you know. So, and it's just being very precise, but at the same time very open and very free and curious, and that costs you something, you know.
I want to play you one more clip. Take a listen to this.
Please welcome Germany's finest actress, Miss Nina Hoss. Europa geht durch mich, Europa geht durch mich. Geister wie verliebter Schlaf. Zeit, die ich zurückgelassen habe. Renne weiter, um zu fliehen. Renne weiter weg vom Leben.
That is my guest Nina Haas singing with the Welsh rock band Manic Street Preachers live at the famous Glastonbury Festival in 2014. It's a track called, are you ready, Nina? I'm going to do it. You ready? Okay, I'm ready. That's a track called Europa geht durch mich.
Very good. I just wanted to say sehr gut, you know.
Was that all right?
You made me go German because it sounded so German. Wow.
How was that all right?
Good.
That was good.
It was really good.
Europa geht durch mich. Because I softened the S thing for you.
Very good.
That's good. That's all. I'm done with the interview now. No, tell me, how did you end up on stage at the biggest music festival in the world with the Manic Street Preachers?
I don't know. It was such a crazy ride. It was one of these things where afterwards you think, how did this happen? It is actually because my husband is a music producer, and he started also with the Manic Street Preachers. He knows the band from way back then because he comes from Cardiff, and that's where they come from. And he produced the Holy Bible, or co-produced, and so it was. They came to Berlin to work on this album, because they somehow wanted some Germanicness in it.
Yeah, people do that. A lot of our bands do that, you know?
Yeah, and Berlin is a great city to be in to make music. And at a certain point, James asked him, and they were in the studio of my husband, and he asked him, we need a German singer for a song. And Alex just said, well, why don't you asked Nina, and I think he was a bit reluctant because in case it didn't work out or if he didn't like it or so, it would be too personal in a way. But I said, let's just try. I don't mind if you say this is not it. So, and I gave it a little. I always had Marlene Dietrich a little bit in mind, you know, this very low German boom voice. You know? So I tried that, and it worked. And for some reason, it brought me to Glastonbury. It brought me to the London, the Roundhouse. It brought me to the Jules Holland show. I mean, all these, which is a very famous show in Britain.
Yeah.
For me, I mean, every musician wants to go to all these places. That's what you work for. And I do this one song, and I get to do this. What's
scarier? What's more nerve-wracking? Playing Glastonbury or playing with the Philharmonic in Tar?
Oh, Glastonbury.
Oh, yeah?
Yes.
You were scared? You were nervous?
Yes. I was, I know stage fright and all of that. But this moment to kind of watch 20 minutes of a concert backstage, being on the side of the stage, seeing 40,000 people in front of you, and knowing you only have one song. So you got to step out and just bring it and don't make a mistake. I thought, but why did I ever say I would do this? It's crazy. I don't know what to do. I was dying, literally dying. And then this adrenaline kicks in, and you somehow do it. And afterwards, you can't remember what just happened. But I think that was really the most nervous I've ever been, I think. And yeah, I was excited playing with the orchestra, you know. But there I was like, oh my God, if I get this wrong, that's because I also didn't want to mess it up for the band, you know. Yeah.
Maybe this is a good way to close things off, because it's sort of something that I've been thinking a lot watching this film, is that Tar is a really complicated film about a lot of different things. You know, it's a complicated film about our culture. It's a complicated film about the meaning of art. It's a complicated film about, you know, what we allow people we perceive to be geniuses to get away with, and what we should allow people who we perceive as geniuses to get away with. I mean, it's a very complicated film, and it's made me think a lot. I mean, doing this show, to be honest with you, Nina, has made me think about that a lot. You know, I've got to meet a lot of really amazing people, and people who we've seen as true artistic geniuses who have let me down and have been, have been rude whatever, you know, and that just happens. As someone who is in the arts, like yourself, in the arts world, like you are, I guess I'm curious did working on this film make you think about that? Make you think about the idea of genius, whether people should be allowed to be called that, like what we might allow them to be. Do you know what I mean by that?
Yes, I do. Of course, I was thinking about it, and I'm still thinking about it, and I don't have the right answer. But I really do think that even if you have something genius within you, I don't know anyone whom I would call that who doesn't need people to work with them or to get their mind going, or there's a new idea that you take on, and then the genius is that you can work with it in a different way than anyone else would or so. But this idea to glorify that one person, and that this one person can allow themselves to treat other people in a non-respectful way, that I think is not modern anymore. That I think doesn't need to be. And I in my experience, when you feel that you're being trusted, you feel that you're being respected, that you at least are being treated kindly, that's when you want to give. That's when you go further than ever if you're under pressure and you're fearful. So that's maybe not that's not news to anyone, but of course it makes you think, how much would you accept if you see that kind of behavior?
Yeah.
And how important it is that we all stand up against that. But the other thing is that if someone, that's what's to me interesting when Tar talks about Bach, for example, if all of that kind of behavior took place in a different time, under different cultural circumstances, and it's music that came out of this person that informed so many other artists, and that you just can't wipe off the surface of the earth, should you really not be allowed to listen to that anymore? That's something you need to, that's what the film asks, this question. And but if you're still around now, I think you can't you can't behave badly. That's or at least if you do, you should be called out.
It's a film that the thing I'll take from that more than anything is that it's a film that seems to really ask more questions.
It does, and that's really everything we wanted.
Yeah,
it's not a film that preaches or that tells you what to think, or that it just opens up your mind. Because at the same time, there is the scene where she talks about Bach, and I watched it 3 times now, and sometimes I'm with the boy. I think, no, actually, he's right, and then the next time I think, no, I can't. I'm completely with Lydia, and so it makes you look at your own thoughts and that's, I think, what life really needs. You have to always check on your beliefs, and what you thought was right a year ago doesn't have to be right today, because we are evolving, and the whole world is evolving, hopefully. And so that's what the film wants, I think. It's just to start a conversation, that we talk about it, for example, and that no one, you don't have to have an answer, but at least that you are aware of all of that being there.
Nina, it's a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for making the time.
Thank you so much for having me.